And welcome to everyone joining us today. We are beyond excited because of many reasons. We are here. Today it's Friday, November 6th, 2020. If you are watching us from the future, we're freaking out, but hopeful, and we're living a historic week. So I'm glad that we can get together today remotely, but still synchronize our creative juices to paint something together and share it. We are beyond excited because we have two new people. They're not new, but two people joining us from two different parts of the world. But first of all, Jen, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. I feel like I can breathe a little bit.
Yeah, well, we'll see how this unfolds and everything. But yes, so uh, if you watch the video that we presented yesterday, you'll know why we're doing this. And I am going to upload, I don't think I can, maybe I can, a picture of my still life. But really quickly, a shout out to Liv from Atlanta, Georgia, and a shout out to Emma from Winchester, UK. Thank you so much. We have muted your phones, but you can use the chat. So we're recording this session so we can use this recording later and we can send it to all of you. But we wanted to make sure that we specifically recognize and send uh, truckloads of gratitude to these two amazing individuals that are joining us from two different parts of the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know that Jen is here co-hosting together with me in case there's something that you need to ask, something that you need assistance with. So please, please, please just check. Yeah, you can use the chat for that. So I'm gonna go right ahead. And Emma, hello. And we just like mention your name and recognize with immense gratitude the fact that you're joining us today. So thank you so much. And so I am going to, yeah, I'm going to so yeah, I'm just gonna briefly for Emma and for everyone else, we mute the microphones because we record the session. We mute the microphones and we can just open the microphones later when we start the discussion. But um, I'm gonna go right ahead. We have two cameras, and what I'll do is let me see. Yeah. So what I'll do is start sketching. I have a still life. If you have a photograph, you can work off of the photograph as well. But I have a still life in front of me, and I decided, let me just show you guys. This is a little bit, but this is the still life that I'm going to use. It's a teacup and then a French press. And I spent part of my morning just rearranging things, finding out what is that I wanted to do. Sorry. And it was a lot of fun to decide. I went to the backyard. I don't have any exciting flowers, but then I just have a vase with some roses and I tried the rose, but it was too much. I tried it without the liquid and then with a spoon, but I don't really use a spoon. And then the French press seemed like a answer, like a difficult, challenging subject, but I just went for it because there's glass and metal. So it was fun to move things around and I love doing that. So finally, I'm just gonna stick with those two objects. And that's what I use when I make tea. And so the first thing that I'm gonna talk about, using a format that it's 12 by 16. This is something that generally I don't recommend for shorter periods of time because it's quite big. We have 2 hours that are just gonna fly. So what I'm doing, the reason why I'm doing it, it's because hopefully this is gonna help everyone see the progress as we, yes, as we move forward. And I'm using cotton paper, but if you have a different surface, so know that each surface would, it's going to give you different results. If you use canvas board, you may need to use more paint. If you use something non-porous like a sheet of plastic, you may get more dripping. It depends also on the materials that you use. I'm going to talk about the palette, but the first stage of the process will be sketching. I like to spend some time because I need to rearrange things, and I want to make sure that I'm content or um, okay with the arrangement. But important, the format I chose, horizontal landscape orientation, because I have two objects. So don't worry if you need time to change things up, change the still life, change the format, or the orientation of the format. Uh, this is a very important part of the process, and um, I encourage you to take some time to think about it and make changes if you need to. I'm using charcoal for this, and I think I'm just gonna move. I'm gonna put some more liquid. Um, People will do different things, and I'm excited. We're excited to see the results. But in my case, I wanted to show some liquid inside of the cup, but it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be a single cup. It doesn't have to be two objects. So uh, be creative and be intentional with the elements that you use, because ultimately, since we're painting this from life, if you are painting it from life, the benefit that we have is that we can choose things that we can connect with, that have some significance for us. So yeah, and what am I gonna do first? So I think I'm just gonna start with the potato shapes. So that means that I'm gonna do very pale outlines. I call them potato shapes because they don't have a specific shape. They're just silhouettes, outlines that help me find out how my items are going to be arranged within the format. If we jump too early into details, then when we realize that compositionally we need to make adjustments, we won't have the room to do them. So the potato shape stage involves very little detail, just whatever amorphous, generalized outlines that we could use. Because what's important right now is to find out what the shapes look like within the format that we use. We generally don't account for the format. We start painting based on the distance between us and the objects and how big or small they appear to us. And then we realize that either we make things too big or too small. And so, yeah, another thing that I would recommend is if you think if you think you want to be, or if you're concerned with the distance between the objects and the edge, set yourself a little bit of a nosebleed. I think I call this nosebleed. I don't know if that's the correct term. But what I do is I set up another format shape inside of my format, because sometimes when I rearrange elements or when I work with composition, unless I am aware and I actually articulate that this is happening, I will end up with things really close to the edge of my format. It's not a bad thing, but sometimes uh, uh, for an expert eye, I would say, it may look like the composition is off frame slightly, or not intentional, or that we didn't have enough room to plan accordingly, or that we lost control. And then we have some swaths of negative space that don't have anything. And all of a sudden we have objects that are really cornered in one area. And so highly recommend that you set up a border so you have some visual space around, unless you want something intentional in the sense that it's cropped. So now that I have this visual border, I can just go back to my potato shapes and I can start uh, retracing them, but with a little bit more intention. And what does that mean, intention? So I just pay a little closer look to the shapes. Actually, I'm gonna make a change because I really like the spout of the French press, and I am just gonna move it slightly. So cups and cylindric elements are really nice because we can really find out where the axis line is inside of them. An axis line is a line that runs through the core of an object. So anything that's cylindric, um, we can easily recognize, find out, and yeah, see where the axis line of the cylindric object is. Why is this important? It's going to be important for a couple of reasons. Number one, that it's going to help us determine how far apart these objects are going to be. And number two, it's going to help me also find out how aligned with the sides of the format the objects are going to be. Because otherwise, if I don't recognize or observe the axis of the cylindric object, I may just do something that feels skewed or not aligned with the sides. Is that important? It's not important. It doesn't make a painting good or bad. I'm just saying that take a look at it, assess it, and then decide if you want to align it or not. So I'm just gonna make sure the French press is a very long, and I'm already moving a little bit too close to the edge. So that's okay. I think that's okay. So it's still working on silhouette, still working on silhouette. So what do we do with the teacup or anything cylindric that sections? What's a section of a cylinder? A section of a cylinder is when the cylinder is sliced. So on a cup, I have a section on top and a section at the bottom. So the saucer, same thing. Although the cylinder, it's not that thick. So I highly recommend that you prioritize the sketching of ovals when you do anything that's cylindric, because we tend to focus too much on the rim or the section of the cylinder, and we forget that there's a continuity around it. We end up making cylindric shapes, um, the sections of cylindric shapes, very much looking like seeds, or yeah, I'll find the word also, but yeah, just rely on the shape of the oval. This is much lower, so here I need to make sure that I work on this. All right, another thing that this is helping me a lot with, the fact that I chose two objects, is that I can work by aligning things between the two objects horizontally. So I was doing the teacup, and the first potato shape, look how much taller, or like almost an inch, beyond an inch. But now I'm rearranging because I can see that the top or the back of the teacup aligned with the French press, it's not that high. So the teacup is a lot smaller. So I'm glad that I chose two objects, regardless of how challenging the glass and the metal is going to be, just because it's going to show the idea of size. Um, and I think that's a good thing. I think also what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the teacup a little bit closer. I'm going to use a teacup a little bit, move the teacup a little bit closer. Um, Something that we should mention that I hopefully is going to make you smile. The simpler the object to paint, the more complex the painting is going to be. We think like, portraits are the most difficult, and then a bowl should be a piece of cake. We've been doing this since March. So Liv and Emma, um, ever since the lockdown here in March, we've been doing this remotely, and we have learned week after week, we have learned a lot. And one of the things that we've learned is that things are deceivingly simple. And when it comes to visual translation, the simplest objects become the most challenging. I was thinking about this and remembering a couple of weeks ago when we did the fire walkers, people walking over burning coals, and the images were complex. There was movement, there was texture, contrast, but we nailed those paintings. The work looks absolutely stunning. This is the teacup, and we think, it's just going to be much easier than painting people walking over coals. Well, you guys tell me at the end if how you feel about this. But that's one of the things. It's actually a good thing, because some people are afraid of portraiture because they think it's too challenging, when in fact uh, it's not as challenging as it seems. All right, so I'm continuing working on the potato shapes, but uh, I advance to the next level in my teacup. The next level is the structural line that splits the or separates the teacup from the saucer. So I make a distinction between outline and then lines that fragment the silhouette into smaller spaces. And I started doing it already on the teacup. Keep your lines light and soft, because you will see things that are going to be much different than what your mind, or your mind rather, your brain and your eye thinks they are, or there are. Yes, so much different. So you have to be open and flexible to make changes. And if you have too much detail and too specific, that will become a little bit more challenging. So keep lines soft, go forward one step at a time, but be open to the fact that you will see changes as you add more elements. And the more committed, or the more detailed your work is, the harder it becomes to make those changes. So that's why I work fast, and I just don't like to commit too much to what I've got. All right, so I think I just love this metallic on the French press. I like the little pole with the tiny circle on top. It's such a beautiful object. Pottery um, is a universal. How should I finish that sentence? It has a universal appeal. Everyone loves pots, and I would distrust anyone who says that they don't like pottery, because it's like someone saying they don't like rainbows, or they don't like I don't know. These days everything's debatable, but I'm just gonna make some changes here as well. But yeah, pottery, it's pretty universal, I would say. All right, so I think I'm okay. I'm just gonna move to the next stage, which means structural lines inside of the French press. So I have the handle, the metallic element. And by the way, we're doing our own version of this. So the level of detail is up to us. So don't feel like this needs to be like the painting that we showed in the video. Henri Fantine, and I forgot the other name, but Jen, can you just tell us the second name of the French painter? Henri
Yes.
Fantine.
Let me look. Hold on one second.
And there's another leg right there. and then the spout. I think it's called spout. Uh, so yeah, I think yeah, well, it's still a work in progress, obviously, but I'm just happy to go one step at a time. I'm gonna just do the level of the water, and don't be afraid. Um, when you feel like you, what's the expression? When you feel like you uh, bit more than you can chew, right? Yes. Don't panic. It's okay. We're gonna feel that. We're gonna feel like, maybe there you thought this was gonna be easy, but it's becoming much more complex and complicated. Um, you guys, I have the tea right there, and I have another teacup next to me because we truly believe that having tea or a hot beverage is a good way to calm our nerves. So um, we're going to put the premise into practice. If you feel that something's overwhelming, stop and have a sip of coffee or tea. It's gonna help. So I'm just gonna move to the next stage. There's a little bit of and in my case, the next stage will be to start shading. So I would break it down so far as first potato shapes or silhouette work. Then after that, I retraced it with a little bit more detail. After that, I brought structural lines or lines inside of the silhouette to fragment the area into smaller spaces. And now I'm just going to go ahead and start shading. Shading is not only the best conclusion to a sketch, but it's the most important because we will be able to find out a lot of things about the scene that we're painting, where the light direction is coming from, where are the shadows. We'll be able to see even further detail when we start diluting the lines. And my suggestion when you tackle or you approach this stage of the sketching process is that you organize it or you unpack it in a way that follows a value scale starting from darker first and then ending with lighter. Um, a value scale is a scale of shading that is gradual and rhythmic. It means that it changes gradually, but in a rhythmic, harmonious way. So darker, a little bit less dark, then medium shade, then very light shades, and finally the absence of it. So sometimes what I do is I use the tip, but depending on what material I'm using to sketch, I can use this side as well to start shading. So in a thanks, yeah, I think
I
Henri
didn't I didn't want to
Fantine.
pronounce it.
Henri Fantine Latour.
Yeah, there you go.
I
You're
don't
much
know.
better than me.
Oh, yeah, right. I'm oh.
Henry, Pantene, like you let la.
Oh, I was just saying that it's true. This is something I'm just gonna, you guys continue working on your sketch, but I feel like um, there are different levels here. When someone um, tells us their name and it's a name that we're not familiar with, I feel like it's our responsibility to sort of like not only learn it, but make sure that we learn it in a way that um, would make the other person happy because it's the ultimate act of empathy. And the fact that you come into that encounter with a generous mind. Um, so I learned over the years not to be ashamed of asking someone, how do you pronounce your name? Or can you repeat it for me? Because before I before this sort of like inquiry, I would just not ask those questions, and I would never call that person by their name. So now that we're mentioning so many artists, I feel like it's nice to try to mention them by their name the way it should be pronounced. But yeah, it's I need to overcome the shyness. So thanks, Jen. Yes. So this painter, although we wouldn't use this painter as an example of what we need to achieve because he was highly hyper realistic, and it's not what we recommend or what this is all about. I like the story of his life and how he was conflicted and trapped in his own language because he was very popular during his time, the end of the 19th century, because of the paintings of flower arrangements. But he had this conundrum. He was very commercially successful, but in order to uh, have a solid livelihood, he had to get commissions of people who wanted that specific look, the hyper realistic flowers. So, in a way, he was condemned by his own mastery of painting, condemned, I would say trapped, because he loved portraiture and he did a few amazing portraits in which he was very innovative, but he kept getting requests for those flowers. And the flowers, Jen, if you want, you can find some of the flowers that he did. They're mind blowing in the sense that at the time there was photography, obviously, and there was the beginning of photography. But I don't think we can find a painter during that time that had such an amazing skill that was able to replicate the photographic image. Uh, I revere this painter um, for the skills, but also for the fact that at the time or later art history didn't recognize his importance, and he was swept underneath the revolutionaries, all the people that broke the rules and they moved painting forward. It's sort of like a sad story, but anyhow, so yeah, I when I saw the painting of the teacup, I just gasped, and I just thought that it was so incredibly touching. Um, and in my defense in explaining this is that I know I will not be able to paint that way, and I am not looking forward to be able to paint that way. So it's not something that I put as an example to achieve because it is not what this is about, and the reason why I paint. And each one of us has a different way of approaching the painting process with different results. And it is in this variety and diversity that we have or gain our strength. Um, all right, so I need to squint my eyes, but there's a lot of darkness on the French press. And I'm just gonna try to find out. The more pressure you put against the paper, the darker it's going to be. So I realized already of things that I could start rearranging. And time-wise, I'm okay. I'm going to start doing the first notes in a second. But my vertical lines, it's something that I do need to, I personally want to take care of because these lines on the edge or whatever lines you have on the edge, on the sides of the format, they are subconsciously determining the verticality of the elements that you have within the format or the lack thereof. So you would think that this is not part of the painting because it's just the edge of a shape, but you would be surprised and amazed how much of an effect these lines may have in whatever you paint inside. They condition the verticality of everything you do so much that subconsciously uh, we determine how the shapes work inside of the painting by having this really strong parameter outside. So anyhow, I'm just gonna continue, and I think I'm gonna do the edge of the board. And if you want to do the edge or the border, because that could be interesting, I recommend you do the whole continuous thing, because otherwise uh, we will have like different breaks and different heights. So at this stage, it's a good idea to reinforce that continuity, so later you don't have to shave too much. And then there's darkness right here. I like to shade as much as possible, so I integrate whatever objects I have within the same scene. So I think for me, that's very important. Um, I We also added the painting of Francisco Zurbarán, the Spanish painter from the 17th century, I think 17th century, um, that has a lot of like black on the background. It just feels like really Renaissance-like. So perhaps that's something that I'm going to use on this painting. I don't know, but we'll see. So I think I'm okay. Then you can proceed to remove any accessory lines that are within the objects. But I think this could be okay. I don't want to overdo my sketch, because this is what happens with anything that we work with that it's dry, any dry media. What happens is that as we build, we get comfortable with the tool, and then we sort of like get acclimated and recalibrate our process based on what the tool is giving us. If we don't stop that process, then we'll feel like we want to continue developing the sketch. And it's very important to understand and know that this is just a draft. It's just a way of planning. So when we start painting, we have a guideline. It's a map. It's not a final drawing. So we get caught up because we feel like we have to have a perfect drawing before we land any brush on the surface, when in fact we don't. I believe we don't. And that's my biggest, I wouldn't say, what word would I use? My biggest criticism to some of the, whoops, my biggest criticism to some of the, I think it's okay. All right, so some of the tutorials online, because the painting tutorials online, they're very much focused on a perfect sketch before we start painting. And I think that's very unrealistic. It's just not the way it goes. I find the process a little bit more organic, especially if we paint from live. It's never that you're going to nail it at the very beginning. Things constantly move. And I think you will forgive me, but that's one of the things of doing this live. But I just need to check who is outside. 1 second. All right, so I don't know. And perfect time to get my other cup and then have a little bit of tea. All right, so I'm going to talk about the materials that I'm using. I'm using oil, and I know that some of you are will use acrylic. And the color palette that I'm using, let me see if I can just put it closer. You don't have to have these colors, but I'm just going to go briefly over what I'm using. Because of what we have learned and experienced, and how much we have been able to explore um, during our isolation, we have added one extra white and one extra black to our base palette. Titanium white is the white that we usually use, but we also bring a little bit of zinc white because it's much more transparent and it works wonders towards the end of the process. We have our regular gray paint, medium gray, not cold, not warm. And then we have two blacks. The paint's gray and the Van Dyke brown. One is cold, one is warm. Uh, Paints gray, it's a cold black or a cold alternative to black. Van Dyke brown, it's a gorgeous, beautiful, fantastic alternative to a warm black or to a black. In this case, this is a warm black. Then our browns are right at the bottom, and we have four neutrals: raw umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and ecru, which is titanium buff. Shanlu, Shanlu. And then we have the two, we call those two the lighting neutrals, or the neutralizing light colors. We have to find out a name for that category. We have a light blue and a light pink. This is a periwinkle color, and this is this is called I forgot the name, but yeah, it's a
It's
light.
called Radiant Blue.
It's the radiant blue and the radiant red, but I just wanted to find the actual name of the color. It's like
Oh,
salmon rose. Salmon rose.
salmon rose.
Anyhow, each brand of paint will have different names, or the brands will name the colors differently. But so we use Gamblin, and in Gamblin, this is Portland medium gray. This is radiant blue and radiant red. But sometimes if you use different brands, then it's good to have an idea of the color, and you'll find what the brand named the color with. All right, so and I'm using two liquids with oil. I'm using mineral spirits, um, the turpentine base, really transparent liquid. And then on the other cup, I have a combination of medium and oil. So this is something that is very personal, and also it depends on what you have available. You can use medium, which is a resin-based synthetic liquid that helps with the consistency of the paint, or you can use oil, like linseed oil. I prefer to use a combination of both. I don't have an exact ratio, but um, this liquid helps us disperse the pigment better on the surface. It just gives us more fluidity on the strokes. So it's important, and it has a certain viscosity, so it doesn't drip. It's a good medium to mix with any thick pasty paint coming out of the tube, so we can build layers slowly. All right, so I'm just gonna move this right here again. Sorry for the, all right, here we go. And I'm ready to do, to transition to, um, from dry to wet. I have all my brushes inside of a jar of French steamed chestnuts, which I'm really happy because now being fall, I can find them again. I love chestnuts. In Spain, I should say in Catalonia, there is a very famous tradition on November 1st. People celebrate El Dia de los Muertos, but also they celebrate the Chestnut Festival. So I grew up eating warm, talk about warm things and warm and fuzzy feelings. Warm chestnuts, sometimes roasted, sometimes steamed. And it's very hard to find them here, but I have to buy them imported from France. Sorry about this interjection, but yeah, I just have all my brushes inside a jar, and it has safflower oil. I don't recommend washing the brushes every single time, just because I'll tell you later, but there's a reason why. When I finish, I just put the brushes inside a jar with oil. It may not be perfect because over time the bristles may bend and lose the shape. There are specific things that we could use to have them in oil and hold them, but this is what works for me right now. So I'm just going to use a big brush. You can clean a brush with safflower oil, and you don't have to wash it with soap first. but I'm going to use the thin turpentine, and then I will use the warm black, and I'm going to go darker to lighter. So this is a step in which the reason or the function of what I'm doing right now is just to seal the painting surface. I talked about the format, the painting format, and now I'm going to talk about the painting surface. These are two different things, and every single time that we go through the webinars, I like to point it out because it's important to categorize them and know what we're dealing with. And I have the porous paper. And what I'm doing right now with a big brush, I'm blocking out the areas of the paper that are dark. And I do this. So I think that's it in this. I'm going to bring some gray, very thin consistency. Um, I don't have to put a lot of paint. The reason why I'm doing this is because on a stain, what we want is to prime the paper, or prime the painting surface rather, prime the painting surface, and then seal the charcoal so it doesn't um, interact with paint later. So darker to lighter, I just I'm gonna bring some of the burnt sienna to paint the tea inside. Big blocks of paint, big blocks of paint. Think color fields, don't think detail. This is a very technical stage that is specifically thought to help us transition from dry to wet. So the expectations here have to be clear. This is not about recognizing what we have painted. It's not about pushing the quote unquote drawing forward and making it better. This is purely a stage in which we can transition from dry to wet in a way that feels simplified and not very risky. So that's what I'm doing. Turpentine, a very watercolor base, watercolor-like consistency, so which means very liquid. And I try to block lighter, darker to lighter. I'm sorry, darker to lighter. Um, we panic at this stage. We panic for a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, we think like this needs to be a continuation of our sketch. So when it starts to look rough and really primitive looking, we say, oh my gosh, we're going backwards instead of forward. This looks very infantile and ridiculous and not professional enough. But that's all a mirage and a judgment that we have. So I try. It's a work in progress, obviously. It's naturally, it's a natural reaction. But I try to focus on what's expected here. And what's expected is to just, as I said, seal the painting surface so it's wet, and it facilitates the application of brushstrokes later. And also, I'm sorry, prime the painting surface and seal the charcoal. That's my expectation. So I am not expecting this to look like Henri Fantine Latour at this stage. I should have uh, practiced that pronunciation in private. When I was growing up in Catalonia, all elementary schools, the second language was French at the time, before English took over. And I went to a Catholic school, so it was really good, but I just lost it because I didn't practice it, and I lost the French. I'm saying this because probably I should be able to pronounce better, but I don't. So I use the big brush, and notice I work fast and I'm careless. I'm not specific. I don't try to be polished with anything, because I know exactly what this is supposed to give me, just an idea of where things are going to be. I recommend not to use white. And if you want something lighter, just use a little bit of turpentine, and let the charcoal on the surface, the painting surface, um, uh, mix with the turpentine and give you um, a different form of paint. But yeah, I'll explain why I try to avoid white paint. Well, I'll explain it right now. Oil doesn't dry immediately. So if we put a white layer underneath, it's going to be very hard to make it darker later. In oil, the two main premises are leaner to oilier and darker to lighter. So if we start oilier right now and we start lighter right now, we're just going to make our lives very, very difficult. And part of the process of painting, I like to get challenged. I feel like when there's something that's challenging me, I want to take it on because I know I'm going to learn something not only about the process, but about myself. But at the same time, if we make it too challenging, if I make it too challenging for myself, there's not going to be anything rewarding or pleasurable during the process. So I don't want to make my life too complicated. I take on the challenge, but at the same time, um, I try to be a little bit thoughtful with the process. Um, and thoughtful means I abide by those principles, which are very much technical. Leaner to oilier, darker to lighter. All right, so uh, this is my staining right now, and I'm content and I'm happy, and know your expectations and stick to them, because otherwise we start bringing our own judgment of what this is supposed to look like, and then it's not fun anymore. And that's why people quit painting, honestly. um, and I have 10 minutes before the first hour, perfect timing to start my first notes. And I'm gonna use a medium brush. So the first thing that I'm doing is I'm switching brushes. Where are my old hairy brushes? Don't throw those, because those are just fantastic for many things. Um, so I'm just gonna get a couple, I don't know. But yeah, these are the old hairy brushes. You know, they lost their shape. The bristles, the toe, we learned the different parts of the brushes this week with the tutorial. So the bristles on the brushes have three different parts. The toes are the tips of the bristles. The Jen, help me out here. What are the other two?
I know the ferrule.
The ferrule is the metallic part. Yes.
Yes. Okay, hold on.
The toes, the I should know this by now, but
Okay, the heel,
the heel. Okay.
the belly.
The belly. Okay, perfect. Yeah, the three parts of the bristles. These are just the bristles, but there are three parts. The toes are the tips of the bristles. The heels are the parts of the bristles that are fastened in the ferrule, which is the metallic element. And then you said the belly?
Yep, the belly.
The belly. Yeah, it's the side. So depending on what kind of paintbrush we use, we can have paintbrushes that have a very pointy toe and a very straight belly. Some of them have a round belly and a flat toe. The heel, the reason why brushes get frayed, it's because the pigment or the paint gets accumulated in the heel of the brush. And this is what happens when we wash them with soap. We think we remove every single particle of oil, but in fact, a very small amount of paint gets trapped in the heel of the paintbrush. And when that hardens over time, what it causes is the toes of the bristles to open up. So that's why even if you wash your brushes with soap and water, put them inside a jar with oil, because you're going to prevent, or you're going to allow the brushes to last much longer. Sorry for taking the time, but yeah, I'll remember the belly and the heels. I was going to say feet, but no, okay, perfect. So I'm just going to use, now I'm going to switch liquids. So I'm just going to do a little bit of this. So before I use the turpentine to create something very watercolor-like, but now what I'm going to do is to use the medium, or the combination, or the thicker liquid, in order to uh, pick up some paint and create a paint that it's not as liquid as before. It has a little bit more consistency. Notice that the paint like drip, but now it's not dripping. And yeah, I'm gonna use this to clean the brush. So just I twirl the bristles against the bottom of the cup, and then I squeeze it, and I use the rag to wipe it off. So I'm changing the brush size, and I'm changing the medium that I'm using. And I'm gonna go back to um, the areas that I stained, and I'm gonna follow the same order from darker to lighter. So I said that during the staining, we are using color blocking, or blocking areas. So on the first notes, which is the stage that I'm going to move on, or move in right now, we're using paint in a way that becomes very mosaic-like. I'm just piecing together the different areas. So I don't have to match the colors right now, but what I'm doing is I'm starting to blend or process some of the colors that I have. And because of the slightly thicker consistency, I'm able to bring back some of the harder edges. So in a way, not in a way, 100%. And this is very important. The drawing doesn't stop when I switch mediums. It's not like I finished with the charcoal or the pencil or whatever I'm using, and then I end the drawing process. The drawing continues until the end. Painting is drawing first. Painting is drawing. So that's the reason why I don't bother having a perfect sketch at the very beginning, because I know I will still have to continue drawing. And the way I draw right now is I draw with my brush and I draw with wet paint, but I am drawing. So what I'm doing is creating these pieces right now, or blocking out these pieces, okay, um, that I can see, helping myself, or allowing the staining to help me or guide me. Because now I'm just doing darker to lighter, so this is a little bit darker. I'm just gonna bring a little bit of the burnt sienna, and I may need to bring some of our gorgeous brown pink, but it'll be later, not now. So darker to lighter. And what I'm doing right now is I am repeating exactly what I did before with the staining, but I'm doing it with paint that has a little bit more consistency. I'm able to block things out. If something is not blocking enough, it means like we're using too much medium. So it's going to take a while to calibrate or recalibrate how much medium and paint we need to use. But essentially, what I'm doing right now is using a medium brush that gives me a slightly more, I wouldn't use the word precision, but definition perhaps. I am going back to those areas with a little bit more of a thicker consistency, not too much. I don't want this to be too oily, because remember, lean too oily. If I put too much oil right now, it's just going to be so wet that I'm going to have a hard time applying brush strokes over it. So yeah. Anyhow, it was fun to research and find out some paintings of teacups. And um, yeah, I don't have to be exact with the color matching. I just want to slowly build um, on my wash. Painting is a slow art, and there's so much goodness about that alone. The fact that it just forces us or to slow down, to be humble about expectations and progress. And that is one of the things that we love so much about painting, especially now that everything's so crazy and we want to hear everything finalized and done and solved and as quickly as possible. Sometimes some things take time, and we are living through times that are not appreciation they're not appreciative of forms slow forms of art like painting. Right, so that was my preaching moment. So I try to be honest about what I'm doing without making too many assumptions. I'm just doing first notes and creating almost like a mosaic. Um, and my brushstroke, I'm bringing a little bit of ecru. It's better to use ecru as alternative to white than just jump to white immediately. So I'm bringing a little bit of ecru right here. And yeah, I think that's okay. And I'll just work on the darkness right on this area. So it's good to remind ourselves of where we are, what we've done, how far we've moved forward, because this is not just about the final result. It's about always knowing where we are and how far we've come. Um, and in that sense, I'm doing first notes. I am just bringing pieces of paint on top of the wash. We've done so many things prior to this that are very important. So right now, I'm just going to move to the wood at the bottom. Again, I don't have to match the colors. I just bring, I'm just going to move my camera one more time, and I'm going to show you my palette because I think this is very important. My color palette is not formed by the colors that I have right here. And I wish people, that's the wrong beginning of any sentence. So do not use that ever. But I feel like when we talk about color palette, uh, I find that there are two separate things that are important to appreciate or distinct, if that's could be used as a verb. So one is the paint that we bring. We call this our raw material. This is not our color palette. The raw material is the paint that we put on the surface. The color palette is the palette that we create off of the raw material. So the raw material never changes. We always use this range. The color palette always changes. So the thing that we have to do and understand is that we have to process the raw materials every single time. It's not going to be like we have the colors and we can just pick one and then apply it directly. It's never like that. We always have to process the raw material in order to create our color palette. And this is what it looks like. I brought some of the raw umber, some of the burnt sienna, I'm sorry, the yellow ochre, and a little bit of the raw umber. And I created a color mixed here with some of the medium that I feel could be good for the wood. So this color right here, I'm just going to start applying it on the wood. And notice that it blocks a little bit. It's still transparent, but it blocks a little bit that area. So again, we make a distinction between color palette and raw material because we have to break away from understanding that the paint that comes out of the tube is the paint that we're going to end up using on the surface. It's never like that. I shouldn't say never, but certainly um, it's not always the case. So another thing that we would highly recommend is that don't worry too much about the subjects on your painting. Try to put attention as well to the surrounding of the subjects. Work on peripheral areas. Sometimes what happens is that we end up overworking the subject way too much, and it just looks so forced and so unnatural and so artificial. When in fact, if we would dedicate a little bit of that time bringing up the background, the surroundings of the subject, then we would immediately need to work on those areas much less. So highly, highly encourage you to give a little bit of thought to the surrounding areas. Don't worry too much about the subject of your painting or the object of your painting, because if you just bring a little bit of that context, you'll have to work less on the subject. So I can draw the teacup, for example. I can draw it by painting the background. I use the word, I'm just, this is completely inappropriate, but maybe that's just gonna be a good thing. I, I watched one of those memes from one of the artists that we follow. I forgot the name, but they said, we like our brushes like we like our men, old and hairy. I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but of course it's inappropriate. I thought it was so hilarious that now I use it without the joke context. Old and hairy brushes are good. I, I forget about what I just said, but I thought it was hilarious. Hilarious. All right, so
I don't know what kind of men these guys are into.
right? I know, I know.
JK, everyone.
It was just funny. So anyhow, all right. So I just like brought this brown wood brown at the on the background. I think I need to bring a little bit more of a dark area right here. And I think the background's gonna be okay. I'm gonna go ahead and block out darker to lighter. And what do you know? The liquid inside of the tea cup matches the color of the wood. And I'm gonna bring some ecru and some white. And I think right now, yes, I am using white. I'm just gonna block out those areas very in a very broad way. One of the reasons why we feel so vulnerable with the process, so vulnerable, it's because we feel like we have to nail everything at any given time, and it's an unrealistic fear that it takes a long time to break, just because it's ingrained in our process. But it doesn't have to be the case. So I'm trying to just work. I think that's the best way to deal with any kind of fear. Just keep working. Just keep working. Keep moving forward. Um, it may seem like the step of an ant, and it may seem insignificant and ridiculous, but if you count a billion of them, you will get really far. All right, I'm just gonna change my profession from painter to preacher. Bad preacher. All right, so I'm just bringing some gray, and I'll just, I'm blocking this area and some white. This is an opportunity also to redraw. Like for example, there's off balance between left and right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna bring some of those tones. And then I'm gonna give you an example of why having lighter paint underneath becomes a problem. I don't know if it's gonna work or not, but I have a little bit of it. When you try to paint over something that has white paint, the white paint won't let you um, make it as dark. So that's the issue. And we will find this like every single time. So it's not like we can learn to avoid it. It happens all the time. But that's the technical explanation why going darker to lighter is very important as much as you can do it. It's harder to paint over white paint than it is over a darker one. It seems very counterintuitive because you would think it's the opposite, but oil is different. So, all right, so I'm just, and I think the background, I'm just gonna leave it washed like that. I like the fact that it almost feels sponged. So for now, I'm not gonna work on it. Maybe I'll just work on the edge, but I have a few other things that I want to work on right here that are more important. I think that's good. All right, so good. I'm just gonna move to second notes. First notes was about piecing together in a mosaic-like fashion things within the wash that would create a little bit more definition. It's not about details. It's not about blending. It's not about likeness even. It's just about building on the wash. And I think I'm going to bring now a brush with with toes that are a little bit less hairy. So this is a brush, it's a medium brush, but if you notice the toes of the brush are not open yet. And this will be my next stage. Second notes are about creating different values within the mosaic-like fragments. In other words, what the second notes are about is working by location. So far, I work by value, which means that I've been doing darker to lighter up to this point, an hour and almost 15 minutes down or into the process. But now I can just pick one location and then develop the values within that location from darker to lighter. So this is not about applying new color. It's about getting the values developed within one section. And that's very important because we feel like painting is all about adding, keep adding color, and that's going to make it all right. And it's not the case. So much about painting is about slowing down and also about refraining from. And it sounds not enjoyable because this would be the opposite of what we would describe as happy, like excess and never ending. Um, yeah, I don't have a counter argument, but yeah, slowing down and refraining from will give you a lot of results. So at the same time, I have 45 minutes, and time management is also a very important part of the painting process. The reality is that we will only have a certain amount of time to work on something, and that should not stop us from achieving as much as we can, whether we have 10 minutes or we have 2 hours or 8. So I always try to come up with a strategy based on the allocated time that I have left. And in these 45 minutes, I think I'm gonna split them up into three parts. I'm gonna take the next 15 minutes and I'm gonna work on the French press for 15 minutes and see how far I can go. But I will remind myself that no matter where I'm at, I will stop after 15 minutes. And then I'm gonna spend 15 minutes on the teacup. The same thing is going to happen. I'm going to stop after 15 minutes. And the last 15 minutes, I think I'm just going to assess the background and the shadows and see where I'm at. I want to give myself room, 15 minutes at least, to reassess my strategy. This is why this is so important. If I don't manage the time that I allow myself to work on something or that I allocate, what's going to end up happening is that I'm going to get engaged with this object right here. 15 minutes will pass. I will feel I'm not fully finished. And since I'm already engaged, I'm going to burn up the rest of the time to work on this until, I can't anymore. That can easily happen. What's the problem with that? The problem is that if I do that, there's nothing bad about it. But if I do that, the rest of the painting is going to be so underdeveloped that it's going to be so hard to bring it up to speed to the same level of development. I don't know if I'm going to have more time to paint on this or when I'm going to have more time. We have a weekly, let me just do the plug. We have a weekly studio time session that it's precisely dedicated to that, and it's our favorite. But for some people, this is it. So you have to be as efficient as you can. And for me, time management, coming up with the, a draft of a strategy just helps a lot. So I'm just gonna, oops, this is very hard. So I'm just gonna go back and then I'm gonna do darker to lighter, again, 15 minutes right here. It's a little bit colder. So my brush strokes are shorter and I'm not blending. I'm not blending yet. So this brush strokes are very pixelated. I went from a mosaic reference or analogy to a pixelated analogy. So the only thing that changes is the size of the stroke, but I'm not ready to do any kind of like blending or anything like that. And, and squinting my eyes, and I'm just gonna be, by the way, I should also explain in regards of blending. I'm already creating highs and lows in one location, and I spent less than a minute. So I need to learn not to overwork, because overworking is a reflection of our insecurity. The reason why we want to spend more time is because we feel like what we've done, it's not good enough. So you have to be really careful and not blame you or the painting. See where that emotion is coming from. But going back to what I was going to say, there are two ways of blending. Two ways of blending. One is blending on the palette when we make the color on in the palette, and then we mix the raw materials and we create something that looks like what we feel the color is. Two is blending on the painting surface. So blending is a very general term, and I'm only categorizing it in one aspect, the location of the blending. There are many other ones, but this is important right now because I may make a color on the palette that looks a little bit lighter because of the reflection, and I apply it in a pixelated way, but I may run out of paint and then I may continue painting because I have some leftover, and I may blend things on the painting surface. Both happen at the same time, the blending on the palette and the blending on the painting surface. And I just put a little bit of white and it's not letting me darken. And then what I'm doing is using the rag, wrapping my finger with the cotton rag, and I am just going to reapply the black or the darker one on top of it. All right, let's just move forward and continue. I try to be focused. By the way, one of the benefits of painting, the mental benefits, is that painting help us improve our focus on things. So this is really healthy and very good because sometimes when we feel like anxious or scattered or we don't practice this focus enough, um, yeah, we lose control easily. So one of the benefits, many benefits in regards of like mental health benefits of painting is to practice or to enhance our ability to focus. So I try to switch off the judgment part and I try to turn on the focus. And how do I achieve that? I try to concentrate, focus concentration on observation. So whatever I see, I try to apply it one brushstroke at a time. I flicker my eyes back and forth constantly. I want to continuously feed my brain through my eyes of whatever information um, I can pick up from the still life. And then I just try to apply it. I'm going to try to bring a darker red. I love the amber, the darkness of the amber color on the tea liquid. I love that a lot. So I'm just going to try to bring it. Uh, my brushstroke is it's very broken, fragmented, piece by piece. It's not smooth, or I don't try to make it smooth because I know that the stage that I'm at right now, it just doesn't make sense to try to make something flat and smooth. It's just that yeah, it's not. So I also need to move things. This is another example of why painting is drawing. So right now I notice that the teapot, it's sort of like diverging the shape. It's diverging too much. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring some of the gray from the background and I'm gonna trim it because it was getting too, it had too much expansion from that area. And I can do the same thing perhaps with the wood that I had on the paint of the wood a little bit lighter. So you better believe that I'm drawing right now. I'm drawing with my brush and I am readjusting those edges that because of the time that I've spent and my level of concentration, I realize they are in a different place. And that is why oil is such a superior medium, in my opinion. It's the fact that it doesn't dry. And I'm glad that Dina, you're using acrylic with a retarder, which is a medium that slows it down. Because I feel like we had this conversation the other day. I honestly believe that oil is a much better medium for beginners than acrylic, um, just because of the fact that it allows us so much flexibility. Right, so I just brought a little bit of the background, but I just needed to trim that. I'm going to continue with my darker to lighter um, and bringing some of the darker shadows, checking the time, and I will stop. Um, I will stop after 15 minutes, regardless of where I'm at. So I try not to judge the stages. This is way too premature for any kind of judgment. I'm just determined and focused on working one ant step at a time. I don't stop. I just assess and I find out if there's something that needs to be readjusted. But this is still pretty foundational. There's no point for me to kind of like stop and feel anything. I know that sounded harsh, but I'm gonna bring some of the background gray through the glass of the pot. Small, pixelated, short, slow brush strokes. I'm gonna bring some lighter tones right on the highlight right here. There's a strong highlight. So I'll bring that also on the edge. I'm concentrated, focus on one section at a time. There's so much work to be done, so I'm not um, wasting time. Just feeling this or that. I just add to whatever area I see it. I have to have a sense of trust in the process. I know that my work will not be in vain. I know that my work, after 15 minutes, maybe not, but after a while, it will amount to something. So have trust and keep working. A little bit of lightness right here and a little bit right here. And I need to work on the dome. I'll bring some of the gray because the dome is, the shape of the dome is also weird on my end. I didn't see it before. I use a little bit of medium because I want the paint to have fluidity, the paintbrush. I want it to have like fluidity. So I'm just gonna continue bringing a little bit of that medium. And I am just slowly, I'm slowly piecing things together. If you notice, I'm very scattered. I have a strategy, but I'm very scattered in where I apply the highs and lows. I work a little bit here and then I just go somewhere else and then I just switch or adjust an edge. It's not like I am focused on one single part of I'm concentrated on one object, but I just move around a lot. There's so much beauty on the reflection alone, on the reflection, on the metallic reflection. So much beauty. Jen, so how is the tea situation in your household?
In what way?
Are you, is there a ritual that you follow? Is it everyone on their own in regards of like warm beverages or not at all?
Well, we do have a bit of a ritual. In the morning, Carl, usually my husband, goes on a walk and then he brings tea and coffee home. We have a coffee shop not too far from our house. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that it's made in our house, but it is a ritual.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Like the source that doesn't matter. No, yeah. Okay, good. Um,
What about you, Julio?
so Kian is more like super ritualistic in regards of the hot drink. You know, it's like he leaves the house and then he gets coffee and he's a coffee drinker. Uh, I like tea and I do it. You know what? I think this is going to be funny, maybe for even Emma and Chloe. I don't know if she's joining us. But when we went on the retreat in the UK, it was so nice to actually have hot warm beverage every time. That I think after that
Mhm.
I just try to keep up with the with that ritual. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just I had the French press forever, and I wasn't using it, and ever since then it's so easy. So yeah, I make it more and throughout the day. Um,
Definitely something cozy and intimate about sitting around a warm cup of tea or warm, cup of coffee. And we were definitely spoiled when we were in the UK.
yeah, yeah, no. And reading when I read the article a while ago, I just love to read that scientific aspect of connecting the warmth of the beverage with how warm we feel towards others. I just never thought of something like that. People usually think coffee as the thing that they need to drink in order to sort of like awaken. And I never thought of a warm drink as something that could make us more empathic. So I love that idea. All right, so I have 1 minute, and in that minute, I'm just gonna bring a detail on the spout if I can. But I feel like right now, I would love to spend more time with this, definitely. But as I said, I'm just gonna stick to my strategy, and I know that I'll have time to revisit this and go over things. But for now, this last minute, I'm just gonna uh, draw the pot from the outside, and I'll leave it at that. Um, Maybe a little bit of a darker area right here. And I think that's it. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it here. And I feel like engaged right now, and I know myself. I could go on and do more things. There's so many strings, and that I feel I really want to knit all the loose ends that I have, and that's beautiful. And I love this part of painting when I feel really engaged on my own in a process. Um, but I said 15 minutes for this, and I'm going to stop. And this is what time management is. Time management has a bad rap, in my opinion. It's just unfortunately associated with productivity and achievement and monetizing the time. And that is absolutely true. But in regards of the art process, as art makers, I know the power of we know the power of time management and how important it is to come up with a basic strategy. So I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes just developing the teacup a little bit, as I said. So let's go for that. And first thing I'm going to do is work on the darker area. And again, I'm having some difficulty because I have some white paint underneath, and it just doesn't make things very easy. But with oil, there's always a way around it. There's always a way around it. And I'm gonna use some of this again. Usually when I mix colors, it's never a perfect formula. I always bring colors from two or three paints, and that is not supposed to happen, but oops. Let me see if I can squeeze in. Okay. Actually, I'm just gonna have some tea. So this is the big boy, and so yeah, I only used that one, but then I started drinking so much that I got the bigger French press. And in fact, I would say this: in March, when we got confined in our homes, it's when we drank the most tea. I would say, just because we were at home and we that tea drinking filled a lot of moments. Yeah, let me just go back to this. So let me see, a little bit darker, and then I know the shape needs to change a tad. So I'm just gonna have to work on the background and trim it from the outside. Same process, same strategy. I'm just drawing with my brush, pixelating the strokes, working darker to lighter. There's so much complexity in the wrapping shapes, but I'm trying not to get overwhelmed. I just want to make sure that I act on anything that I see, try to build on what I have. There's a little bit, so this edge, let me just see if I can bring it again. I'm gonna try the borders to be a little bit rounder. Um, and Jen, just like when my mind just went back to the French painter, can you find out if in fact he was a victim of his own commercial success? The Henri,
Meaning,
if if he was in fact, the commissions that he got for the flowers was, yeah, um, what ended up making him more commercial and being swept under the rug of painters becoming
sure,
famous at the time. Because I know that he was contemporary of all the other guys. He was a contemporary of the Monets and the Cézannes and the Gauguins and everyone. Um, but he just didn't make the cut, whatever that means. And I believe it's just because of that commercial success that he had. He's famous. In fact, this is going to be kind of like not shocking. I would say ironic. He is famous, and maybe you can find that painting, Jen. He's famous for being the painter of all the impressionists at the time. There's a famous painting of all the dudes. They didn't include Berthe Morisot, although she was part of the gang. But he made a painting of all the impressionists at the time. It's a famous painting.
one of like in a group.
Yeah, yeah, they're all together. I think one of them is painting. Um, but it's so funny. He did that painting, and yeah, he wasn't an impressionist. That's for sure. I remember the reading somewhere that he was, again, he was like a victim of his own commercial success in that sense, and he was very well known at the time, but um, he just I don't think he ended up in any of the salons or um, certainly not the impressionist salons. I just wonder. Um, and then I'm just gonna bring a little bit of this darker tone. Um, I'm using the brush with tighter toes, slightly tighter toes to draw lines. I couldn't do that with the old hairy brush, so I'm doing it with this one. And there's a little bit of a darker tone on the T. It's a little bit darker underneath. Let me see if I can just bring that darkness. So checking the time and just trying to find out. I'm gonna bring some darkness outside because again, we are drawing. There's no separation between drawing and painting. And part of what we do, it's not just to fill up spaces with color. That's coloring. And that's like a single layer kind of thing, very one dimension aspect. Yeah, that's helping me just draw the cup from the outside. Yeah, it's kind of like slowly I'm just building what I see and cleaning the brush with a turpentine and trying to make paint brushes that are pixelated so it doesn't feel like too flat. Doesn't feel too flat. Ecru, because there's the china is not white. There's like off white. There's even a little bit of green in certain parts, but I'm just gonna work on that another time on the studio time. I'm just gonna bring the edge, and there is. This is a good example of when or why we put white, zinc white. Zinc white is the least chalky white, and sometimes when we have built a few layers and we want to lighten up a color, I'm pretty sure that you have found yourselves in this situation. You want to lighten up something and then you use the titanium white and it becomes so chalky that it whites out whatever you have underneath. And it happened to me all the time. And I wasn't, I didn't bother to understand why paint companies would create 6 or 7 kinds of white in their lines. I just thought, titanium white and that's it. But as we explored and learned throughout these months, we realized that it makes sense because some of the whites have a different consistency and transparency and may be very, very useful in helping us blend and helping us lighten up things without whiting them out, helping us maintain the color of our um, process mixture without removing it too much. So my point is that zinc white could be a great color to blend without whiting out. So I'm adding a little bit of zinc white on the rim or the edge of the cup right here. And I'm gonna add a little bit of zinc white on this area right here. So what it does, it's very transparent. So it's not gonna give you like a strong mark. It's just gonna blend softly with the surrounding. It's perfect for blending. For example, I have this edge and the edge, it's a little bit blurry because the liquid that doesn't stop like in a sharp way right there. So bringing some zinc white will soften that edge. I need to find out what goes on here. Maybe a little bit lighter on this end, definitely. Yeah, really nice. Okay, so good. And then I think I want to darken the background a little bit. I have still 3 minutes, so that's really wonderful. I have 3 minutes. So I'm gonna try to bring some of the background along what I have to connect, to integrate, closing the gaps. It's a good way to develop the painting sometimes. So yeah, I still need to do a lot of work on this side of the cup, but I'm not unhappy. I'm not unhappy. There's a bounce effect underneath the china. And I think I'm just gonna bring some shadow also right here. It's a little bit of a shadow. So I need to anchor this. Maybe with the titanium white, there's the point of contact that you can see. But yeah, I would also say this. I truly believe that painting needs to stop desiring or wanting to be photographic. There is photography, and photography it's its own medium and does its own thing, and then painting has its own um, entity, and it does its own thing. It doesn't have to be photographic in order to get validation. So in that sense, I very much strongly encourage any kind of imperfection or even distortion. There's something about uh, that that uh, comes when we paint, that it's so valuable. It goes beyond, it transcends the realism or the photographic aspect. So even though we are being representational and we are working on proportions and shadows, uh, there is something about leaving things wonky and imperfect that I think it has tremendous value. So uh, for me, it's very important because um, painting, it's not so supposed to be photographic. You know, we already have photography, so I'm just bringing some lightness on the cup, and I still feel, yeah, 15 minutes. So that was it. So 15 minutes on this and 15 minutes on this, and then I said the last 15 minutes or so, I'm just gonna assess and see what's going on. And I feel like what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna split up this time. I think I'm gonna dedicate 10 minutes in developing a little bit this background, and then also creating highs and lows underneath. Because I feel like right now this French press or the teapot, it feels like it's floating on something. It's not really grounded, and on the let me see if I can move this and I have a different light because it's reflecting. I still feel like it's not, it's a little bit more grounded, but it's not quite there yet. So 15 minutes, let me see, I'm gonna dedicate 10 to work on the background. And I perhaps need, I'm not gonna use the bigger brush. I'm gonna bring back the old hairy guys um, and just bring some gray and see if I can just build build on what I've got a little bit more. So I like the lighter gray right here. So I'm gonna concentrate on the surrounding areas to just give it a little bit more of a framework. That's what I'm gonna do. Again, this is something we encourage. Don't overlook the peripheral areas. Sometimes they can give you much like stronger results than working on the object. Whoops, I just put a lot of medium. I think it's just gonna drip, but we'll see. So when I paint something like this, a larger surface, I try to vary the direction of the brushstroke, so no one can really identify a single direction. So I break it up. It looks painterly, um, but it's not too controlled, at least at this stage. Some gray, just plain gray, and maybe with some white. So I hatch it and just to build that area. And that alone, it's helping me push the background further back. Um, and maybe I'll just use now the bigger brush and try to blend that area. Let me see if I can get away with very little. Um, One of the reasons why, and we discussed this in the tutorial on Tuesday, one of the reasons why I like to use soft brushes rather than thicker ones, it's because I can control the amount of paint that I put a little bit better. So I feel like, especially for some of us that are starting, or they don't have that much, we don't have that much practice. Um, I feel like there's a tendency of putting way too much paint on the surface, and then it's really hard to, or it becomes much harder to quote unquote control or manage. So that's the reason. And it's not just me, a lot of purists. Oh, that's, look at the whiteout effect. This is exactly what we meant when we said, be careful with titanium white. By the way, we're using a different kind of titanium white paint. And we should point out that titanium white, the one that we use, it doesn't have linseed oil. It has safflower oil instead. This brand, it's called Radiant White, and it's by Gamblin. The brand is Gamblin. It's called Radiant White, and they manufacture a titanium white. It's the same pigment, titanium white, but the binder is safflower oil instead of linseed oil. And what it does is that the white, it's much, much chalkier because linseed oil is yellow and safflower oil is clear, or very much, it's very light. So naturally the pigment, it stands out a lot more. It's great because sometimes it's frustrating not to get like something really pale, but at the same time, these things can happen. You think you have a white, and then you apply it, and then it just becomes so powerful that it whites out, or it creates a whiteout. Yeah. So and it's just gonna drip right here, but that's okay. We highly recommend, when you finish the work, whether you want to continue or not, which we hope you want to continue and work a little bit further. But if you don't work on it, keep it flat, because the paint's still very wet, very much wet, the oil paint, and it may just run down. If so, if you can, just if you're working on easel, just put the board flat just for a few hours, and then you can just put it back up, and then you won't have any of this, because there's nothing more frustrating than just working on something for a while and you get an extraordinary amount of detail. Then you go have lunch and you come back and there's an oil drip just going through whatever, an eye or the eyelashes or something. And then you just have to rebuild it again. So keep the work flat. I'm just going to work on that. Yeah. With some yellow ochre, and I'll use the old hairy guy to bring some lightness. Okay, so I'm right here. Anywhere else? There is a beautiful highlight right under here. And then the background seems very much gray underneath. So let me see if I can bring that tone. So a perfect example of what second notes mean. And in fact, I should just say that we are now still doing second notes. Is the part of the painting that takes the longest. So we have this color right here, and we first put like a block. And so right now, within that same color, what I'm doing is bringing versions of it, because my eyes now see variations. So enough of the, I think I'm just gonna go back to the tight um, toes. So I'm just bringing it's interesting, and also something that we should all consider. We should not prioritize one surface over another. Just because I'm doing the flat area, it doesn't mean like it's secondary or it's not as important, or everything, every square inch matters, and it's important. I shouldn't use the word matter. I mean, sorry, it's a different discussion. But yeah, every surface is important. Let me just clarify, instead of like, I hope you're not listening to me, but we were just talking about how the word matter has seeped into our vocabulary right now because it's everywhere. And for better or for worse, words like that become more present in our colloquial way of or dialogue with people. Uh, so it's interesting because we, yeah, sort of like, and I'm going to say it, sort of like the word trump, which is a verb. Uh, it's funny how we found ourselves using that as a verb quite often, just because it seems omnipresent. So that's why we make it a point to um, use or expand our vocabulary. All right, so I'm just using, and time wise, yeah, I have 5 minutes. So 5 minutes. So I think that's what I'm going to do with my next 5 minutes. I'm going to also go a little bit longer since we started a few minutes after our initial time. But my plan is to work right now on the wood area, because I feel like that's it's going to be very important, and for many reasons. Mostly because it's just going to help me draw the area a little bit better. I'm going to bring some light gray. I need that metal to show. And a little darker right here. Yeah, that's very good. And underneath, and what else? This gray right here. So yeah, I'm just gonna mostly concentrate on that section. And by the way, another thing that we discussed in our tutorial on Tuesday is the fact, I think we mentioned that um, we have a tendency of preferring uh, sizes of brushes that are much smaller than what we should be using instead, just because precision uh, becomes, I was going to use the word trump, precision trumps every other category. um, see, that's we meant with expanding vocabulary. So instead, it's advisable, or people recommend trying to use brush sizes that are a little bit bigger than you would um, consider comfortable. Um, why is that important, and why we make it a point? Let me just add a couple of notes here, and I'll try to explain. Um, it's important because ultimately, uh, talking about the look of painting compared to photography, we appreciate that there are imperfections and things on the painting that transcend reality. So for us, at least for us, precision, it's not um, high up in the criteria that we use to assess our work. And it shouldn't be, because there are other things that are much more important, other aesthetic components or criteria that is much more important. Just to point out a word that we used at the very beginning, the ferrule. The ferrule is the metallic part that connects the bristles with the wood. Well, this little tiny thing was invented in the late 1800s. Um, in fact, it was invented by an American person, and there's a theory which I find fascinating that argues that because of the introduction of the ferrules on the paintbrushes, artists were able to use flat brushes for the first time. Before paintbrushes with ferrule, all the brushes were round and they were tied up. The bristles were tied up on the round handle. When the ferrule was introduced, technology allowed for brushes to be flat, and artists started to use those new brushes, um, creating different kinds of brush strokes that were not allowed or possible before. So the impressionism, some people argue that the technological advantage or advance in paintbrushes allowed for the impressionism to appear and take hold. So in order to connect what I just said with what I said before, it's important that you feel more comfortable with brushes a little bit bigger than you would use, because precision, it's not the ultimate criteria when we paint. That was the purpose of my mini dissertation. So things that I'm doing right now, I'm just like, I'm still working on the legs. For example, I'm bringing a little bit of a highlight on this area. There's a cast shadow. Um, but I'm purposely concentrating my work on the lower end. This needs to be brought up a little bit more or more defined. And I'm just gonna bring a little lighter version because the tea leaves are concentrated at the bottom and I love the look of them. Okay. And so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna explain exactly what are we gonna do, what's gonna happen. I'm gonna personally, I'm just gonna leave my stage right here. I'll take a picture and I'll upload it. We're gonna take a break, a 10-minute break, in which we highly recommend that you stretch, you drink, you use the restroom. I'm sorry, that sounds very kindergarten teacher like. But yes, take a break. 10 minutes will fly by, but so during this time, if you can, by the way, we consider everything that we've done up to this point a work in progress. So after the 10 minutes, we'll reconvene and we will open the microphones and we will share our feedback to some of the pieces that will be uploaded. You don't have to stay. You don't have to say goodbye if you can't. You don't have to show your face. But if you can, take a snapshot of your progress and then use the link in the email that we sent that says shared photo folder to upload the images. If you find it challenging or difficult, you can always either text them or email them to Jen. Her number is also on the email. And when we reconvene in 10 minutes, we will start the conversation. We will just go over certain things and we'll give you feedback on your specific piece. It's the more of you that upload, the more we can learn from each other. So it's a really helpful conversation. We made a distinction between um, criticism and critique. So we are very constructive in that sense. So I'm going to pause the recording. I'm going to pause the video. It's 1:03 our time. We'll reconvene at 1:13 our time. We'll see you in 10 minutes. And hello, everyone. We're back. Thanks so much. We started recording again, and I'm just going to go really quickly. We now allowing everyone to unmute themselves and mute themselves. So I'm just going to go to Emma first, just because we're going to follow the time difference. And I know it's very late in the UK, so thanks for uploading the images, but I'm just gonna start sharing the work. So I'll go to the folder, and what we did was by the way, we uploaded all the images that we used as reference during our presentation. So you have them all here. And Jen, thank you so much for uploading the Henri's work. This is
Sure.
and it's so funny that because Claire mentioned this painting, that it freaked her out because of the glove and the ungloved hand, and that was himself. Um, it was his self-portrait, right, Jen?
No, that's actually Manet.
Oh my gosh! Wow!
Yeah, I know.
Wow!
It's at the Art Institute of Chicago, so that would make sense that you would know
Oh
it.
wow!
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. So thanks. This is the famous painting of all the dudes. Yeah, but this is an iconic painting that people bring up when they talk about impressionism. I'm sorry. I put this one next. I reorganize them. It gets me every time. When
Stunning.
it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And in this photo, you guys, in the comments is an article talking about the commercialism of Henri and how,
Okay.
and how I think it was probably his artistic downfall, but also it seemed to really affect um, his
It
like
it,
self. Yeah.
it did affect him.
It did. It really affected him. He, just kept churning them out, and he didn't have enough time for his other work, and he started to feel terrible about himself, and it's
Wow.
really sad actually. But
Yeah.
he just kept doing it because this is, he was commissioned so much work, and he studied at the Louvre. Like he studied with all these dudes, and
Right.
never could get over that hump.
It Thank you so much, Jen. It's so important because um, the fact it's a sad story and also fascinating how he became again a victim of his own skills. Um, yeah, very.
It reminds me of of all those actors that that just end up getting this sitcom or whatever, and that's what they're known for. But they went to Juilliard and and lived on stage for 10 years and before that, and that's what they'll be known for is Mr. Bob Winkle from whatever.
Right,
But I
right.
mean, not to say that that works bad because sitcom work is amazing and to be known in that comedy world is incredible and specific and you know you're so lucky and it's probably the same like this guy's showing still to this day centuries later in art museums all over the world.
Yeah, the peaches, the this is just, yeah, it's just incredible. Yeah, it's a good analogy. And I find, by the way, I mean, I'm not about hyperrealism, but I do find that at the time, in that specific time, moment in time, I just find that that was quite remarkable because I feel like now it's easier to value it, but I feel like at the time it was kind of like revolutionary. Okay, so I am just gonna go really quickly. First of all, Emma, thank you so much. We're so excited that you joined us. Sorry about the technological or technical difficulty. Thanks for uploading your image and the painting. You don't have to show your face. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. It's totally open and optional. But I really appreciate the work that you're here and that you uploaded this. This is an exquisite composition, and I love the way it's a single cup. First of all, I absolutely love the way you set the stage for the cup. I like the size of the cup compared to the size of your canvas. It looks like it's canvas. And so I usually, what we do, we analyze the composition first, because it's the first thing that comes through. And I think the way you arranged it is really good. You leave a lot of room to just wander around the object. I like the fact that it's a single one, so the narrative of isolation and loneliness for me just comes forward. Um, so there's something I would say in regards of like being more specific. I love your brushstroke and I love the veins on the wood. I think that's really beautiful. Just to bring an artistic quality of that surface. So when we look at a scene, when there's an object and a surface and something else, we try to find out where the light source may be coming from. And it's hard because sometimes we have different light sources, artificial, natural, a window, and then something else lighting it as well. But I think it's important because if we get an idea where the light source is coming from, we can enhance and exaggerate certain areas that make that light much more present in the scene. So in that sense, I would, for example, I mean, it depends on the actual things that you're seeing, but I just love the fact that you have this cast shadow right here. And at the same time, you have a quality of reflection on the wood that's very interesting. So I would say feedback and notes that I would give you would be try to incorporate elements that exaggerate the source of light, depending on what you see and where the light's coming from, because it could really make that component that's invisible, light, much more present in the scene. At the same time, I also feel like I understand that there's this space um, that the way you resolved it, it just makes sense, but I just feel like there's an opportunity there to unlock that solid space and create a sense of depth. So I would consider um, uh, maybe creating some variations within the same dark light, because right now it just feels like really cut out almost, and blocked out in a really dramatic, solid way, almost like very harsh. In regards of the softness of the edge, sometimes when we work with surfaces or edges, um, there's a trick to make them look like they are turning the corner and literally continuing. And that trick consists of like making that edge a little bit lighter. It may even show on the photograph. Let me see. So there is a sense, obviously, more so in the reflection. Let me see if I can just do that. It's either, but there's a sense sometimes of it's very small. It's a really barely perceivable effect, but there's a sense of like something when the surface turns the corner, it captures our reflection. It seems silly, but what I would do is work on the quality of the edge. So in certain parts you can bring like you have right here, almost a sense of a little bit of lightness. Yeah, you have it in certain spots. Never mind, yeah, you got it. But yeah, and the cup looks fantastic. I love the drips, and nice, nice oval shape. So that section, it's fantastic. The light underneath, inside of the handle, fantastic. Emma, we miss you, and we're hoping you are doing okay. I know that you guys are on lockdown right now, so I hope you're safe. Um,
Yes, thanks.
how's it?
Do you hear me?
Yeah, how's it going? How are
Oh,
you?
in Winchester.
Is everything okay?
Yeah,
Family,
everything's,
friends?
yes. I mean, all I've been doing for the last few days is following your election, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, that's
Same, girl, same.
Yeah.
it's just a little bit embarrassing that it's embarrassing that that's the case because we
Well,
should have
it's very important to all of us, really. So,
right.
yeah. But
Well,
no, but we're fine here otherwise. I have my son with me, so it's
oh,
nice.
wonderful,
Yeah.
great. Well, we hope we don't disappoint, but we
No,
just
I
don't
thought
know.
I loved your work, and I love all the other cups that have appeared. The
Right.
other people's work is fantastic, really original and interesting stuff.
Thanks, thanks. I
I
think that's
really
part of the
enjoyed it.
reward. Thank you so much. And know that if you intend to work a little bit more on it, you're always welcome to upload it at any point.
Oh,
And
thanks.
yeah, we give feedback and we put some notes, so it helps everyone. So
I think I was a bit ambitious with the size of my canvas. I didn't really have time to, and then I got a bit carried away with the grain in the wood. And
no, I think that's fantastic. And in fact, we had this experience last week. I think it was last week. Julie, who also painted today, she used an 18 by 24 inch surface to paint the telephone. And there's
oh,
something about
lovely.
having the same amount of time on a larger surface that invites for more detail somehow. So this is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Good job.
thank you, Julio.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so nice to hear your voice. We miss you.
We miss you, Emma. Thank you for
Oh,
joining us.
oh, well, I'm sorry it's taken me so long to come back, but I'll try and join up a bit more now.
It's totally fine. It's okay. I'm glad you're here and whenever, yeah,
Yeah.
so don't feel obligated. But yeah, it's and hopefully again, hopefully we won't disappoint. It's you never know coming out of this tumultuous and really unpredictable, awful administration. And it's still it's if we overcome this, it's gonna be step one, but it's gonna be very difficult. Just know that the majority of this country is feeling the pain.
I'm sure you must be. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, so
let's hope it's sort of going to get better now.
I hope, I
I
hope.
meant to say that also on another subject, but that painting by Fontaine Latour of the artists altogether. That's one of my happiest memories. Is my mother taking me to see that painting at the Chateau when I was little, and telling me who they each were, and so it has a very special memory for me, that painting.
Oh,
And I've always liked his work anyway. So, so
thanks so much for sharing that. That's
really good.
oh, that's fantastic. I'm so glad that we brought up a memory, but
Yeah,
that's
very
wonderful.
good. Very happy one. Thank you.
Thanks, thanks.
All right. Well, say bye then.
Okay, bye. And
Bye.
um, I'm just gonna move forward. And Julie, we always you end up being the last person always. So if you're here, I'm just
I
gonna
am.
perfect. Yeah. So you know what? This time I just thought we thought let's just yeah
Thanks,
do
because I
it.
have to go today. So, and
Okay.
I painted this on a smaller canvas this time. It's only 8 by 8.
Oh wow.
Dealing with paper issues, I've got to get new paper.
Oh no. Well, I'm just glad. And you know what? This is a good practice to change the surface and to change the format and to change the format size wise also. I think you're becoming such a wonderful painter, Julie. So I just want
Oh,
to point that out first.
you're too kind, but I think the practice helps, definitely.
Yeah, the practice is like the first the most important teacher. So yeah, and in that sense, this is fantastic. I love the composition. I like how you arranged it. I love the fabric. This stands out a lot, which makes me very happy because again, considering surfaces outside of the main subject is as important as the subject or the object itself. So this is absolutely mind-blowing, fantastic second notes on that blue, that Prussian blue almost. So
How did you know? Yes, that's what it is. My favorite.
we love that Prussian blue, of course.
Do. And I had the oranges because I had an orange today and I'm for breakfast, and I thought, oh, I'll just put it in there because I wanted something contrast with the blue.
Good, perfect. So it just works great. So love the composition. I like the cropping of the plate right here, and this is dangerously close
Yeah.
to the edge,
I knew.
but you can get away with it because there's something that counterbalances the composition on the other side. So without this would have been an eyesore, but because you have this on the opposite side and it's cropped, it really pulls the teacup in a way that doesn't feel like odd or out of frame. So it's a great example on how you can counterbalance things that compositionally may be too close to the edge. Good job.
I'm really debating whether I should get rid of the couch in the back because it's a little too much for me in a way. But I like this. I like the sun on it.
Right. No, I just think it works. And I also love the fact that it's not as detailed. So there's a sense of like depth of field that it's brilliant. So you have things focused here, and then the orange, it's a little bit unfocused. Please do not sharpen it because it just makes the cup 3D looking.
Oh, you think so? It helps the cup. Oh.
Absolutely. If anything, let me just see. If anything, I would just give you a couple of things.
Yeah.
Number one, I think on this area, it's going to be so silly that I hope you laugh. But on this area, you have a really nice section of the cylinder. On this one, it feels not as round.
It's sharp, yeah.
I would bring, or I would create almost like a double lane, because you have the darker part of the cup of the rim continues, and then you have the lighter just coming in a little bit. So I would work on this area and maybe just bring some of this gorgeous color that you have up, just so you have continuation and it doesn't feel like the line breaks.
Okay, I think that's a great idea.
And the second thing that I would say is that I would definitely keep the background the way you have it, and but I would do two things. I would bleach a little bit the warmth of the color, because here it's very poignant. It just feels very pigmented. So
it is.
I would just bleach it in the sense maybe so it looks a little fuzzier and not as dark.
Okay.
And that will push it back. And at the same time, I love this so much, the fact that you have light, and use the photograph, because obviously this would be different by now. But I would really connect or correlate the spotlight on the couch with a spotlight on the table.
Yeah, and I had it and then I kind of lost it. So I had it kind of a sharp line and it just seemed too fake. So I kind of melted it together at the last minute. But I agree, it needs that brightness. And
maybe I'm just, if you tried it, I trust your taste. And if it looked like if it looked too architectural, then yeah.
I think it'll perk it up somewhat. And if I do lighten the back of the table also. It also, the iPhone shooting it, of course, takes it to a more contrast than it has.
I would say, Julie, the touch-ups that you may need are very few and very strategic. You have something amazing. And perhaps another thing that I would do, consider this also, because I feel you have such beautiful sense on the fabric that I feel the brushstroke on the teacup, it's still a little bit too choppy in certain areas. So I would keep the way you have it on top, but perhaps I would somehow soften a tad, especially the belly.
Okay. Yeah.
Just the belly.
I agree.
What do you think?
Yep, I think so. I think it needs a little bit more of the, what is the name of that color? The one I just love. It's the tannish.
The titanium buff.
Titanium buff, right.
Yeah.
I think.
And I'll tell you why. Just
Mhm.
because I feel, and I'm going to be very frank and straightforward. I feel like the brushstrokes right now, they feel almost painted with a knife, with a spatula, with a
Mhm.
palette knife, and I feel like that has almost like a commercial look.
Mm,
Yeah, we've seen the paintings like people like use with spatula,
right.
and I think this painting is so beyond that that I feel I would soften some of it so it doesn't feel
That way.
all the
Yeah,
way
I get
there.
it. I could totally get it. I was using a really wide brush because you were talking about use a big brush and I thought, here I have a very small canvas. I should just try this. And that was sort of the last thing I did on the white. And it's not
I mean,
sort of a mess.
no. Totally, I'm totally blown away. I'm just being like really almost like ridiculously specific.
Oh, it
Nobody
helps.
will see this.
Oh, no, I think it's a great help. Thank you.
But you have achieved such level of confidence, and it looks so amazing that I think I need to be as specific as I can.
Oh, it's very helpful. I love it. And I have not worked on my telephone anymore, but I'm going to try to do that this weekend. We'll pick up all these things.
Whenever you feel anxious, it's always a good idea.
Yes, it's been great. And I kept thinking, I bet we're going to hear a result of the election while we're on painting, but we haven't. So that's kind of good.
Awesome.
Thank you, though. I think this was a great one to do to sort of calm the
Yeah,
nerves.
good. I feel the same way. Yeah, I just was
Thank
able
you.
to disconnect, so that's good.
Okay, bye.
Bye. All right, so fantastic. And then just gonna do a couple of things. Sorry. Um, okay, so never mind. And all right, so I'm just gonna move to the next. Darlene, yes. I'm gonna go to you, Darlene, and thanks for the image. And I think that's perfect. I like the table and I like the cup. Great beginning. And I love how you arranged the space and moved to the wash and first notes already. So I love the background, slightly colored, but not too colored. And the way the cup stands out. Nice job with the sections of the, what is it called? The sections of the cylinder. So yeah, I would say this. So this has like a very warm look to it. So, and it's very much tonal. So everything is under the same light. So consider that because you have a lot of coolness here. And it's going to be an artistic decision. It's just going to be up to you if you want to just go there or not. But I feel like everything is very off-white. So yeah, I would just continue. What would I do? I just love, for example, the fact that you have the light of the marble or the surface of the table bouncing on the wall. You have this having more high contrast on this side. I would just work on that. You did it, but I would possibly enhance it a little bit more. And in regards of the cup, I would continue working. I know you started, continue working on the fact that you have like an interior of the handle and you have the outside or the outdoor of it. So I would just work on that on the handle, just work on the interior and then also on the upper part. I think that's going to be important. And also this is a cylindric shape, so you have some sort of like darker area on both outdoor sides or outdoor areas of the cup. So in order to increase this sense of cylindric effect, I would just bring a little bit of like darker shadows on both sides. Be careful as well because the lines that you have on the cup, they have a little bit of correlation, even though they look straight, but they actually go wrap around in a very visible way. So when you make the lines, I would just pick them up a little bit on this end because they should follow the same uh, direction or the same curvature as the section of the cup, and I feel like they diverge a little bit there, which I like. I like because not everything needs to be absolutely perfect, and there's something, as I said, there's something about that um, distortion that makes it look much more interesting than the real image. But I would just consider that as well. There's also the shadow. I feel the shadow has, it feels like a shape. It's very dark, and I would just pick up some of the colors that you had on the background. So it feels like it's, yeah, it's a light effect rather than a shape.
Okay.
What do you think?
I got a long ways to go, but thank you. Thanks. Was a little concerned because my charcoal was on the stripes of the cup was so dark. I wish I had done a lighter charcoal thing when I
Oh,
started. But
no, I think, yeah, I love the pattern a lot. I think that's, but I think that's good. Yeah. I would possibly sort of like, again, this is going to be an artistic decision. I like the fact that on the cup, there's a range between darker and pale, or so I feel like this is really dark, and
yeah, I
so
agree.
working with value, it just, this is like it just needs work. I mean, work. I'm sorry. It just needs time. Sorry. Sorry. I always go. It needs it needs a little bit of time.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
What do you think? I hope that didn't sound like terrible. Everyone has a different sort of like pace, and I just am looking forward to continue working on this on Wednesday if you join.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. I'm gonna work on the value on the cup quite a bit.
Okay.
It needs it.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of the composition, and take the opportunity that there is not a lot of like noise in the sense of like detail, to actually develop value distinctions a little bit deeper, because simplicity in composition means that we have an opportunity to really work on those second notes much more.
Okay. Thanks, Julio.
Thanks, Arlene. Thank you so much. And
Julio, do you mind actually going to Liv next? I just uploaded hers.
Oh, cool. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Of course. And let me see 1 second. I just refreshed, and hold on 1 sec. Okay, so wonderful. Perfect. Beautiful. Thanks. Liv, how are you?
Oh, nope, sorry, that's Laura, babe. It's
Oh.
the next one. It's purple to all the way to the left. Do you see it?
Oh, wow. Liv. My gosh, this looks amazing. First of all, how are you? Oh my gosh, so happy when we saw that you signed up. Thank you so much. We miss you. We are still painting, Liv, and we're thrilled that you joined us today, and how interesting and funny and serendipitous that you decided to, or that you joined us today. Thanks for uploading. I love the work. The color palette comes forward first for me. It's just really interesting and unusual in a complementary way. So I love the light as well. It seems very dramatic in the sense that you have a very strong cast shadow. We don't need it. We don't have the actual image of the still life. If you want to upload it, that's fine, or send it to Jen. But I'm just gonna go by what we have right here. And compositionally, I love the fact that you have these two diagonal lines that are almost equidistant. So it's a way of creating a sense of depth because they're diagonal, but at the same time, just giving some space to frame the work. So, well, good job on that. I also love the fact that you brought two items, and in a way, I like that the teacup is in the middle, and then this is sort of like a satellite of it. So it just prioritizes or yeah, prioritizes the two different objects by the way they're placed. Um, I think I would work on a couple of things. So I would work on the hollowness of the cup because right now the way it's painted and the way you use the shadows, it just feels like inside of the cup, it's much more shallow than the actual height of the cup. So I would just work. I consider. I don't know what view do you have, or how what the elements look like under the light that you have, but definitely I would just consider working a little bit more on the light inside of the cup because I feel like the effect that I read is that there's less depth looking in than there actually is based on the size of the cup. Another thing that I would do is you have a really nice round shape on the right. The oval really turns around and it doesn't create a break of the line, but it does create a break of the line on the other side. So there's not a correlation between both extremes or sides of that oval. I would consider revisiting the other side. I don't know if you're gonna have time or not, but consider revisiting the other side and see if you can just bring more of a correlation. And I'm not saying this just because it's good or it's bad. I'm saying it because it stands out, and sometimes when we want to look at when we're looking at things on our painting is a way of making sure that different parts of the painting help each other equally. So I think that would be one area that I would do. So just I'm also going to be very open and frank because I think that's what I would expect. But there's a sense of the axis of each of the elements not being aligned. So if I run a line on through the core of this, and I run a line through the core of this, you would have two axis lines. Sometimes that is wonderful, just because it creates a sense of a dynamic tension. But I feel like in this way, just consider it if you want to keep it or not. You have a little bit more of a vertical alignment here, and the bowl on the side, it almost feels like it's aligned with the tilt of the table. So what happens is that you are actually enhancing that angle of the table by the fact that this is aligned with it. So it just shortens or reduces, it reduces the sense of perspective. If this ball would have been more aligned with a vertical, then you have a really strong juxtaposition of the verticality of the bowl and then the perspective on the table. So that's what comes forward for me. And in regard of the lines, something similar to I told Arlene, just make sure that what you see, those lines have a correlation with the section of the cylinder, because it happens to me all the time. Sometimes I do the section of the cylinder round, but then any patterns or lines that follow more of a straight element, and it is the opposition between those two things that stands out too much, and then it takes too much attention or grabs too much attention. So that will be my feedback. So I hope you continue working on it, and I'm sorry if you cannot jump in, but in the conversation. But if you have any comments, you can just send us a note or add it on the chat right here below, and we can just reply back. And also, we hope that you have a little bit of time to work on this, hopefully, and then you can upload it again or send it to us again. We'll put it in the folder, and then we'll make comments on it. But thank you so much again. I hope you're doing well. How is Atlanta? Are you still there? We have some friends. Well, Jen, you have one of your best friends living there. So we are connected with that city, and thank you so much
Absolutely.
for yeah, hopefully things will turn around in that state. I mean, sorry, I'm making things bad, but we're so happy of the direction the state is going. Jen, you want to help me out? I feel like I'm making things really bad.
No, we are. We,
Yeah.
yeah, George is amazing. And it's awesome that you're there to be a part of it. So
Yeah, yeah. And
go Georgia.
I, in that sense, really briefly, I would say this, that I've been talking a little bit more about this because I've been listening to a few podcasts and interviews with Stacey Abrams, and this summer and before, and I absolutely love her and what she does. And it makes me, I haven't watched the news because I prefer not go through this long burning cold path. But the few things that are coming out is that she is getting so much more attention for what she actually achieved. And if in fact things are reversed, it will be two things. One, payback for the fact that they stole the election from her a couple of years ago when she ran for governor, and they totally cheated her results, if you ask me. And number two, I forgot what number two was going to be, but yeah, the fact that she's getting recognized um, nationwide, and hopefully it's just going to bring more attention to her, because I just hope that in my dreams she would be the next president. But I know she wants to run for president, so it would be quite amazing that she would. I don't know what I'm talking about, you guys, but yes, Stacey Abrams, love her. And thanks, Jen. So I'm just gonna go to Dina, and thank you so much, Dina, for yeah, that's beautiful. I just love your still life right here. Excuse me. Uh, oh, it's so wonderful.
Well, it's, T, calming, taking time, slowing down. And that's what origami does too for me. Your full focus is precise folds. And if it's not precise, then it doesn't go right. And I don't know, what's helped me a lot is watching the videos, the origami videos, because books, I used to get so frustrated because it's still, you can read the words, you can look at the picture, and it's usually just a diagram. It's so frustrating. So about 3 years ago, I started just making a lot of difference. I've got a lot of, I'll have to show you one day, but a lot of 3D, really cute little things. But again, back to the reason why I do it is it takes you away from anything else, and you have to just concentrate on that and just enjoy the process, and then when you get done, you've got a 3D little character that started out with just a square piece of paper. And then you can have your little tea break, and you can have your origami, and then feel good for the rest of the day.
Oh, that's so cool. It's just, I love that you brought something that really means a lot to you, and that story alone makes the painting so much more valuable. Not that it isn't, but it's important to make our own, or stage it in our own way. So we just take that concept, which is simple still life, and make it truly personal. That's when it's so valuable. So thanks for sharing that. I agree, and it's a different way of seeing it, and it's important to do it. And I just love the composition, and I love the red.
The
And
red is just, I grabbed it because my last piece was more muted tones, the telephone, except for the phone, right? That was the strongest color. And I thought, I'm going to do something more colorful and more bold. So that's my mouse pad. And I thought, oh, that's perfect. I'll just use that as the background. And then in the painting, I kind of ran into the same issue as who is it, the one that got the dark, was it Emma? Was it Emma? Somebody had the black.
Oh,
the
yeah, I
plain
think it was
black.
Emma in the background
Yeah.
that I just mentioned. Yeah.
And then you're right, because the light source. But I just wanted to do it black because I figured, you know how we did that one, the nature, the theme of,
Oh, yeah,
right,
nature
yeah.
Morts.
And some of those still lifes, they just had a stark
Right.
background, dark.
That's good.
But I plan on working on the piece and bringing some light from behind, like in that area from the
Well, yeah,
top corner.
yeah, no, that's and let's just go and
Okay.
assess it, because I just mentioned that to Emma, and then you blocked it out, but you are bringing a great point, because you're just essentially building or bringing something that you experienced with a premise before, a painting before, and just adding it here. So I think it's working in that sense. It just creates, and let's just also talk about it, because the way you have it right now, it just enhances that idea almost of surrealism. So not everything has to kind of like follow the premises of the light, and in that sense, I don't know. On this painting, I think it works, because
Okay.
it just creates that sense of um, you know, surrealism almost. It's like a very strange space, because you have the red and you have the black. So it works, and it may just become more quote unquote ordinary if you try to make it. I don't know until we would see it, but I think it's working here. Plus, it's not black. It has a really deep, rich, purpley tone that I
Well,
really
you know what? You know why it's got that color, right?
Zorn
Because
palette.
that's my palette. That's right. That's why it's not black.
That's so wonderful. Darlene mentioned that, she wants to do the Zorn palette. And it's so funny, because I was just typing away and I was preparing the email, and I felt like there was so much with the art statement of the that I didn't want to just add like the Zorn idea. And then I was thinking before going to bed, and I thought, you know what, I should have done it, but I'm glad I didn't, because I think that was important, and we have to dedicate one with this to the Zorn palette, of course. But anyhow, so yeah, I think it's brilliant.
So these are just Zorn, these colors on this painting, and the last painting was also just Zorn. So when you just look at the two side by side and the range, it's if somebody was to tell me that that's what the range you could get, I wouldn't have believed them unless I did it myself, because I'd say, how impossible can you do that with just 4 colors? And it works. I mean, it's real. So, and I'm glad you told me not to fuss with the light, because I wasn't going to at first, but then when I heard you comment on the other painting, I thought, oh yeah, he's gonna say the same thing about mine, that it looks too dark, and where's the light source? So that's why I thought, okay, I can do that. But then if you think this will be okay, then
I think so. I think you should keep it. I think, I know how you work, and I just can't wait. I don't know if you want to dedicate more time. I hope you do.
Yeah, I will.
But I have a couple of things. And so especially I'm looking at this, and there's certainly such beauty in the cast shadow that I feel like when I saw it from a distance, it almost feels like there's not enough contrast here. So I would just bring some. I just think the cast shadow is so gorgeous, and I feel you have to be careful, because if you make it too dark, then it would be too close to the bottom of the cup. Maybe I would just make it the red lighter outside.
Yeah, well, I'm planning on making that bottom. That's just the start. It's going to be lighter. So I plan on making it just a tiny bit, because it's going to have some powder blue stripes going on it. And so I think that'll lighten that area. And then I will bring down the dark cast, increase the dark shadow.
Good. Make a note and see what it looks like. And I also
Mhm.
feel like this is the same situation as I would say Darlene and
Mhm.
Liv.
Mhm.
So I know that you have this section. You have another
Mhm.
section of the cylinder,
Mhm.
and it's possibly because it depends on what it looks like. But I
Mhm.
feel like there's not a correlation between
Mm.
the
Mhm.
curvature on this section
Yeah.
and then the curvature on this one. And
Yeah.
it may be just that the fact that maybe the wrapping here it's not as evident, but I don't know. I would just see if, and it also depends on your eye level and how.
Yeah.
Um, but it almost feels like the closer we are to, the closer our eye level is to the section of a cylinder, the
Yeah.
flatter it's gonna look.
Yeah.
This point of view for me informs me that your point of view, your eye level, it's much higher.
It
So
is.
for me, based on the rules of like perspective or whatever you want to call it, it almost feels like this should be even more round than the
Yes.
section of.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I'm looking at it right now and I am higher. So yes, I can see that. Yeah, I got to dip it down a little bit more.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, because that stands out slightly. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm looking at from a very demanding perspective.
Mhm.
I'm trying to be as sharp as I can,
Mhm.
and but I think that, and it's such an important part because it creates such high contrast that it's
Mhm.
really visible.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I love the different. I mean, you're gonna call me crazy, but I love the fact that you have the rim of the cup reflected on the green.
Mhm.
So I think that's something that I would do rather than just creating like a um, value scale.
Mhm.
I would just really be deep into that what's going on inside of the liquid, especially
Mm.
for you that you
Mhm.
become so confident in details
Mm.
in your work. I
Mm.
would definitely make this one of the main subjects, the
Okay.
actual liquid and whatever it's
Okay.
happening in there, because I think
Okay.
it could be really powerful.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and then this, I would bring more variations on the origami. I think,
Oh yeah, that's really
yeah,
bare bones right there. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm beyond excited about this painting.
Oh, thanks.
Beyond excited. I'm just like really, and again, same thing that I said to Julie. This is like dangerously close to the edge,
Right.
but it doesn't stand out and it doesn't feel like it's obstructing my visual path. Why?
Right.
Because you have this bigger in size that's counterbalancing that. So
Mhm.
very
Yeah.
good example of that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Dina. And Lois, what's up? Let me just move these around. Wow, I love this cup. It's so cool.
It's very different. I did it very, very fast.
Okay.
And I just
Ooh,
I liked what was happening. I didn't want to like mess around with it too much.
good.
I wanted it to look glazed like it is.
Right.
It's my favorite cup. It's like it's been my
Oh,
companion.
oh,
And so it was really hard to just come up with at first just the still life, the composition.
right.
I had all these ideas, I had had pictures of my stove with the fire making the coffee. I had it in with all my
Ooh,
paints. I had all this stuff. And then I was like listening to you and just talked about the simplicity of it. And it really just wanted it to be like a love letter to this cup.
done. Done. Yeah, I think that's just beautiful what you just said. And I think conceptually it's much more interesting. And I love that you went that route because it's just going to bring more attention to the cup because ultimately the cup deserves more attention. So I think it's a way of combining your intentions, your conceptual uh, um, background, and then the visual realization of those two things
And it's
combined.
also the bandwidth I had today for painting, honestly.
The what?
Bandwidth that I had
Oh.
for painting today. I'm still checking Twitter as we're doing this.
Oh,
It's
I
like I
know.
can't. So, but
No,
I'm glad I
stop.
got that done. but I do need to place it. I don't know where to place it. It's floating right now. So I don't know. You want to help me with that?
I think, well, you know, you have a very interesting light composition here because you have, let's look at the inside of the hollowness, because here you have the darker area and then you have the lighter area. So it's a very good, I would just work with this because I feel like it's something that I would develop inside.
Yeah,
you have
I
those
was
two
thinking that
things.
too.
And then it tells you that you have light coming on this direction. If you just like connect both things, but at the same time you have a gorgeous, very lavender, soft lavender like cast shadow from here. So you have a cast shadow on this side. Look how gray and gorgeous it is. And then you have something that comes from the other side. So I would definitely use this limited rainbow of shadows that you have and really incorporate it on your painting, because I feel like you could create a really rich, vibrant, wide spectrum painting by incorporating the two shadows. I would just work on that. And then I love that you kept things very ecru-like. But here's the thing, you have two options here. The way I see it, you have two options. There's a wonderful ecru note on the glaze of the cup. I just love it. It's just beautiful.
Right.
You could just bring that ecru also, or expand it on the background and make it.
I was thinking that too, and it would give it keep that warmth that I want.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I went yellow ochre, but I was thinking because I should do something separate from the cup, but I like that. Now that you say it, I think, yeah, you're right.
You have like different paths here. I think, and each path
dark.
I'm sorry?
Or dark.
Each path has like a different result, and they're both, all of them, both of the three of them or whatever more, they will have excellent results. So if you go through the path of like making it harmonious, you're going to create a really warm, inviting painting overall. If you are making a different temperature on the background, you're really going to focus on the cup and make almost like a portrait of that object, which is also very interesting. And finally, I just consider that, but I love this pink blanket. What is this?
It's I'll show you. I'm going to put up another photo.
Okay. I'm just feeling that, Lois. I'm just feeling that. And I'll tell you why, because I just feel like these are very vintage colors. And I almost feel like that it reads on the photograph very bubblegum pink, but it could be more of a vintage sort of like salmon, and the salmon with the ecru and this beautiful burnt sienna with the Van Dyke brown in the coffee could just be such a gorgeous palette. So I would say that's path number 3. I don't know. It just depends. If you
maybe I'll play around with it on my iPad.
Okay. I mean, knowing myself, like if I were, you know, from my point of view, I like things extremely tonal, just because I like things that are harmonious. So, but I also love that gorgeous pink on the background. So I don't know what I would do, but you have many options. Artistically, I think the cup deserves a little bit more TLC if you wanted to. And then you can decide the background, what you wanted to bring. But
cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Nice. There's another photo you'll see, but that will explain the pink.
Okay, let me just.
You can go on to Lara now. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just refresh and I'll go to Lara as well. Okay. Oh, it didn't. Maybe it just came up. Oh,
there it is.
Woo!
Oh, it's on the ground.
Okay. How about this? What if you just paint the butt, like peeking from?
She looks like the cup. She's the same colors.
Right. I mean, as if the cup was on top of the blanket and then you had, okay, we just come, I'm getting too excited. Don't pay attention. But this is, come on. I absolutely love this, Lois. So it, I can wait for whatever you end up doing, but I love this.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Lois. And I'm just Laura, thanks so much. This is gorgeous. My gosh, is that a magnolia flower?
No, can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, hibiscus.
Yes.
Oh, that.
I love that one. That one that you wanted to do before. I
Yeah.
loved that. So I was gonna actually make it gray, but the colors were so beautiful. I'm like, on another occasion, because I
Oh,
also wanted a, I don't know, wanted to focus on the cup, but yeah, hibiscus. Hmm.
so Laura, let me ask you this. The hibiscus, is it like a live hibiscus or
Yes. Do you see the picture? Do you see the real one?
no, wait, stop. I need to see this. Where is it? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And look at the beautiful cup. But I don't
Oh,
know.
stop. This is just, how could I possibly have missed this? Oh, Jesus. Okay, Laura, we need to talk. Where is this hibiscus flower from?
Right, my fans, my fans, the next people next door are Filipinos, and they
Yeah.
have a tree that goes over to
Oh,
my fence,
Jesus.
and I have like several flowers right now there. Yeah.
I freaking love this. Okay, so the flower, where is it? Is it the stem inside of the cup?
Yes. Yes. I taped it
Oh.
because
Okay,
I wanted to see more cup. You know.
right.
Huge.
Okay, so I just think it's incredible. Oh, sorry. I just think it's incredible. I think it's in absolutely incredible. So I'm just gonna. It's just beyond, and the cup is beautiful.
I love that
Um,
cup. My friend, she is already passed from breast cancer, Mari. When she had her in Galveston, she had her wedding, and she gave everybody little cups, like vintage cups, different. They all cups and tea kettles for tea, because I guess that's what they do in Galveston for high tea or something they call it. So that's why it's so precious to me, this cup and
oh.
saucer. But now the detail on it, I don't know. I
Okay,
love the detail on it. Talk to me.
okay. It just depends on how much time and how much you want to put on it. So for me, I mean, the flower really stands out in color. So I think the color, I think I would bring like potent pigment, like develop it a little bit more, but that alizarin crimson
Oh, yeah.
inside and this orange, cadmium orange is just incredible. I also
Mhm.
noticed that I feel um, I feel on this stem, there's this like darker area on this petal.
That's I don't know if you see the, okay, because now light has changed.
Oh, I
So
see.
what I'm seeing in person now, you don't see it on the cup, but in the
Okay.
previous pictures, in the initial picture I started doing it with, I didn't send you that one. You could totally see, you see it very clear.
All right. So it's the overlap between the two petals and then it creates this backlight.
No, it's an
Oh,
actual shadow of the middle stem there.
oh,
Of that,
I
yes.
forgot the,
But there
the,
is an overlap thing that you're talking about.
all
Now you
right.
can see that more visibly because the light has
Okay.
changed.
So, and I think in that sense, pick one photograph that you may have because you may have, it's good that you did the live, but combine it with the studio time. And I would just pick one and then stick with one light source,
Mm-hmm.
one
Right.
image, and then develop it. Because right now this is so strong and it has such a different color from the rest of the flower that it almost feels like it's a foreign object or something
Mm.
that's been stained.
Ah,
So
okay.
if you want to keep it, then I would harmonize the brown, even though it's clearly it's not visible, but I would
I
harmonize
think
it
I
with
like the new light. I'm sorry to interrupt, Julio.
no,
I
no,
think
no,
I
no.
like the new light better.
Yeah, I would just harmonize it. So it's still there, but then it just feels a little bit more harmonious with the rest of the orange. Um, I just love everything about this painting. I love the parquet, the wood floor. Is that wood floor?
Yeah, that's my wood floor, but except that I have this painting that's actually blocking it, so I couldn't see the door or the thing, and I can't really move it right now.
Okay,
You can
so
see it in the picture.
listen, Laura,
Dime, dime.
that floor and whatever you did on this mahogany wood, it's Henri Fantine Latour level.
Oh wow. Okay, continue.
Are you with me, Jen? It's just
I'm with you.
come on, look at this. Ridiculous. Do not touch it.
Ah, how about
Sorry.
the back, Juliocito?
Uh, say that again.
How about the back of the
Okay. Yeah.
mueble?
All right. So that's something that it feels like it's in progress. So I don't know how I would
No, you
treat it.
can't see it.
Um, I don't know. I just feel like if I look at this, I would develop it a little bit further, but I wouldn't try to bring the complexity that you have right here. In fact, I would possibly keep it monochromatic.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of the color that you may use, I would just keep this monochromatic. Less bleach it in the sense like less contrast. That's what I mean by bleaching it.
Okay.
More detail, but monochromatic and less contrast. Just because I just feel like if you put this amount of detail everywhere, it's just gonna everything come forward. And I'm not sure that that's gonna work. And I'll tell you why, because you have such a strong perspective. The foreshortened top of the table, it's really strong. It just drives you in. That if you develop the background too much, you're gonna have something that makes you want to go in the painting and then something that's gonna be pushing you out of the painting. So I would just treat it very lightly, monochromatically first, and you can always add color and see what that does. What that does. I have a problem with that.
Me too.
Those three
That
words.
does.
So yeah, I would just bring some level of detail maybe to the cup. So don't worry about the little patterns. You can do it later, but I wouldn't work on that at first. I would just I would possibly soften the dark shadows. I think this is very dark, and it may
Okay.
be the light that you have right now. So you may have to work off of a photograph, Laura. But I would just keep it dainty and light and delicate and fragile, and perhaps not use as much contrast. And then it's very soft in saturation. Even though you have green, things are very muted. So I would just almost also keep it in a way monochromatic. Um, and then I would just bring the punch on the color of
Flower.
that flower. What do you think?
Yeah, yes, I because my original thought was um make the flower gray and the little flowers on the cup would stand out. But when I actually saw the flower just close up, when I brought it in, I was like, I just love the color of it. Maybe that's the star along with the cup, but the cup could.
Okay, very good point. And you may have to reassess. Same thing that I mentioned to Lois. You have different paths, and each one of them will give you a different meaning. And I like what you just said. I think that's really interesting. And in a way, just having black faded black and white flower could just bring a ton of meaning and be less about representation and more about symbolizing your state of mind or your emotional state. So I consider it, because I think it's a
Mm.
good idea, and um, maybe that should be the path that you should go to. I think
You know
that's
what, Julio? I thought if I didn't like it, or if I thought that the flower could still be beautiful in its gray color, that I would totally go with the gray. Because in the pictures that you actually saw, or that you posted, not posted, but you shared with us, the inside of the flower is still colorful. So I may still leave it like that and maybe go with the gray. Okay.
so. Do me a favor, take a picture, and then I don't know if you can apply a filter that or edit and remove the black the color, and then
Mm.
just have that black and white version. The only reason why I said um, that should be the punch, it's because when you presented this, that kind of like gives me, a punch, because it's so brilliant. But you
So
have to
brilliant.
factor in the symbolism, and I think that is very important. So
Mm.
yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
agree with you. Just like think a little bit about it, but I think the symbolism is incredible. Don't worry about the aesthetics of it. In fact, I would say if I would put both aesthetics and symbolism, I would just make sure that the symbolism is what's really important, because
Mm.
aesthetics, you can just look what you did with the mahogany table and the reflection. You can achieve something amazing. So because of that, maybe the symbolism should be more important.
Okay. Thank you, Julio.
Thank you.
Great.
It's just amazing. It's just amazing. Amazing. Amazing
Thank you,
paintings. You
Julio.
guys,
Thank you.
as always, this was so beautiful. I mean, look at the paintings. It's just like, honestly, I think we nailed it. I just feel like really I feel really good about doing what we did. It just made me think of something else. Slow down, get off your phones. I'm gonna be the mean uncle right now. Turn that shit off. I never say this, but